Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet, the voice you know with the news you trust studio, sponsored by the Family Forest Carbon Program, where we help family forest owners get paid to improve the health of their woods. I'm Joe Everett. Well, currently already 73 degrees outside here at the farm this morning, so if you're going to be out working outside or around the farm today, make sure you stay hydrated. It's going to be another hot one. Now let's check in with Brianna Smith for this week's Between the Rows.
It's time for another Between the Rows update. Between the Rows is brought to you by Seed Genetics Direct, business with a handshake, not a 3-year contract. After a wet spring, much of Ohio is finally getting the warm, dry weather needed to move the crop forward. While the majority of the state is seeing real progress, there are still pockets where wet conditions continue to cause headaches. Here's Joe McCandlish in Fairfield County.
Corn crop as a whole, I think, it's starting to look pretty good now that we're getting the heat behind it. And same thing with beans too, where they just really struggled early on and kind of in the month of May. So I look to see if we can get some drier days to stuff really start looking on a good positive.
In Northwest Ohio, it's been a bit of a different story. We'll check in with Doug Dirkscheide in Wood County.
So we've had two large rain events in the last week. A week ago, we got probably the average for the county, I would say, was 3 inches. We still got ponding water in low-lying areas. There's going to be holes in these fields. I've talked to a lot of guys that they're probably done messing with replanting corn. Bean-wise, I think guys may still try to touch some of them up if need be. Most of the guys I've talked to are ready for this year to be over already.
For the full Between the Rows update, visit ohioagnet.com. Reporting for Ohio's Country Journal and Ohio AgNet, I'm Brianna Smith.
Hey, thanks, Brianna, for the update. Well, President Donald Trump is again considering how to shield American agriculture industry stakeholders from the effects of his illegal immigration crackdown. USA Today says that comes only days after the administration reinstated workplace raids at the U.S. agricultural operations. We can't put farms out of business, Trump said on June 20th. We are looking to do something where good and reputable farmers can take responsibility for the people they hire and let them have the responsibility. At the same time, we don't want to hurt people who are not criminals. The messages have been mixed as raids continue despite the president promising changes to protect migrants in the farming, hotel, and leisure industries in a social media post on Truth Social on June 12th. After directing immigration officials to largely pause the raids on farms, hotels, restaurants, and meatpacking plants, the administration reversed course only a few days later and resumed the raids. Well, milk production in the 24 major milk-producing states in the United States totaled 19.1 billion pounds, up 1.7% from May of 2024. April's revised production at 18.6 billion pounds was up 1.7% from April of last year. The April revision represents an increase of 17 million pounds, or 0.1% from last month's preliminary production estimate. Production per cow in the 24 major milk-producing states averaged 2,125 pounds for May, 7 pounds above May of last year. The number of milk cows on farms in the 24 states was 9 million head, 118,000 head more than in May of last year, and 6,000 more head than in April of 2025. Milk production in the United States totaled 19.9 billion pounds, up 1.6% from May of last year. Production per cow in the United States averaged 2,110 pounds for May, 7 pounds above May of last year. The number of milk cows on U.S. farms totaled 9.45 million head, 114,000 more than in May of 2024. Stay tuned. We'll be back with today's weather after this.
If your summer road trip leads you to Ohio's farm country, be sure to share the road with Ohio's farmers. Farm machinery moves slowly, makes wide turns, and needs extra space to avoid obstacles like mailboxes and guardrails. Let's all be mindful and make sure everyone gets home safe and sound this year. This message brought to you by the Ohio AgNet, OSU Extension Ag Safety and Health Team, and this station.
You're tuning in on the Ohio AgNet. Today's weather brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Another hot one in Ohio. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that Ohio Ag weather update. Well above normal temperatures, high humidity values. Take it easy. Be careful. Stay hydrated. You know the drill. It's the same kind of heat that's been here in the past couple of days. I do see it winding down, though, as we move forward. As it winds down, we will be seeing, I think, increases in cloud cover. That's the main driver on pulling temperatures back. I don't think it's a major change in air mass. It's just covering a little bit of the sun a little bit more. So while today we see no threat of precipitation at all, tomorrow we can see some pop-up heat-based thunderstorms coming across Lake Erie and into northern parts of Ohio. Thursday and Friday, we see better chances statewide, but still probably only about 40 to 50% coverage on a daily basis. The weekend, Saturday and Sunday, some pop-up thunderstorms as well. Temperatures not quite as warm. I don't think we see rain every day in every location, but by the end of this weekend, everybody should have seen at least one chance of or threat of rain. Now next week, Monday, Tuesday, we have a frontal boundary coming through that brings good rains, 1/4 to 3/4 inch rainfall totals, coverage 90% of the Buckeye State, and behind that we are dry for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of next week. I think we're going to see a dry 5th as well before showers and thunderstorms come back late the 5th through the 6th and into the early 7th time frame. That's the way your forecast is stacking up. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Let's look at your numbers from this week's Ohio Crop Progress Report, which is sponsored by Unleaded 88. Save on fuel with the blue handle. Fill up with Unleaded 88. Discover more at ohiocornandwheat.org. Starting with the national numbers, 97% of the corn had emerged as of Sunday. That is 1 point ahead of last year's 96%, but 1 point behind the 5-year average of 98%. Corn silking was pegged at 4%, consistent with last year, and 1 percentage point ahead of the 5-year average of 3%. As for its crop condition, estimated that 70% of the corn crop was in good to excellent condition, down 2 points from 72% the previous week, and 1 point ahead of last year's 69%. As we turn to soybeans, planting moved ahead 3 points to reach 96% complete as of Sunday. That is consistent with last year and 1 point behind the 5-year average of 97%. As for its crop development, 90% of the soybeans had emerged as of Sunday. That is 1 point ahead of last year's 89% and consistent with the 5-year average. Soybeans blooming were pegged at 8%, 1 point ahead of last year and the 5-year average of 7%. As for its crop condition, estimated that 66% of the soybeans had emerged and were in good to excellent condition, unchanged from the previous week, and 1 point below 67% last year. As we turn to winter wheat, 96% of the winter wheat was headed nationwide as of Sunday. That was 1 point behind 97% at this time last year and consistent with the 5-year average. As for its harvest progress, it moved ahead 9 percentage points last week to reach 19% complete nationwide. That was 19 points behind last year's 38% and 9 points behind the 5-year average pace of 28%. As for its crop condition, 49% of the crop remaining in the fields was rated in good to excellent condition, down 3 points from 52% the previous week. Now looking at your numbers from the Buckeye State, corn emerges at 92% complete. That's 4 points behind the 5-year average. As for its condition, it stayed steady at 49% good and 11% excellent. As we look to soybeans, planting hit 96% with 87% emerged and 1% blooming. Soybeans were rated 50% good and 7% excellent. As we look to winter wheat, harvest jumped to 2% complete here in the Buckeye State, with the national numbers hitting 19%. Wheat condition remained solid with 50% good and 15% excellent. To learn more on the Ohio Crop Progress Report, you can find that today at ohioagnet.com. Well, the Senate reconciliation budget, including farm safety net improvements, is up this week as Republicans try to pass and return to the House the president's core tax bill by July 4th. It's crunch time for the Senate, taking up its version of the House-passed reconciliation budget, including improved reference prices, crop insurance coverage, and business tax breaks.
We lowered tax rates for owners of small and medium-sized businesses, farms, and ranches, and made it easier for them to recover the cost of investing in their businesses, which in turn freed up cash for them to invest in their operations and their workers.
Majority Leader John Thune pointed to a couple, including the pass-through deduction many producers take on their individual returns.
The Section 199A small business tax deduction and full expensing for new capital investment in domestic research and development. Our legislation will permanently extend these key provisions.
It does the same for the immediate expensing of farm and other equipment, plus a doubling of the estate tax exemption and survival of the 45Z biofuels credit. However, the Senate would scale back some $80 billion in SNAP cost shifting to the states and reverse a House boost to the state and local tax break that secured the votes for the House passage. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says the bill, based on nonpartisan scoring, still costs more than it generates in economic growth.
Even after you take into account any impacts, any economic impacts, the so-called dynamic scoring created by the Republican bill, it is still a loser for working and middle-class families. Only the wealthy gain.
But Thune argues another independent review shows the bill produces more revenue than it costs, with lower tax rates and higher wages for all incomes. But the opposite if current law isn't extended. And for farmers, it means a modernized safety net and greater tax certainty. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more after this. Get the equipment and trucks you need at the Ritchie Brothers' next Great Lakes Regional event on June 26th and 27th. This absolute unreserved auction will feature online bidding, and items are located in Columbus, Chicago, and Detroit. Choose from over 2,000 items, including a wide selection of construction equipment, truck, tractors, and more. Don't miss Ritchie Brothers' Great Lakes Regional event on June 26th and 27th. For more details, visit rbauction.com. Again, that's rbauction.com. Now for today's market analysis, which is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company, excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Call 574-566-2113 for information on soybean marketing to LDC. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets finished lower, sharply lower across the board yesterday. Double-digit losses in soybeans and wheats, and 7 to 8 cents of loss, 9 cents in corn. It was an interesting day overall. Big weather, or favorable weather, was the big story on the grain side of things. Right now we're seeing some significant rains falling in most of the key grain areas, both corn and soybeans. And it's not being called too much in many areas, even though you have the odd derecho here or there and some strong to severe weather in spots. Overall, the corn and wheat markets are being supply-driven. They're in bear market territory right now. The RVO news from last week temporarily supported soybeans, but now that we're seeing that back off a little bit, it becomes a fundamental driver of trade to see whether we can see these markets bounce at all. Can the U.S. and China score a trade deal before the end of summer? Right now, China needs to have large soybeans on the books by mid-September to execute their soybean export program that they have historically. That means China needs to start buying U.S. beans by mid-August, and that's right about the same time that we have this cutoff for getting a U.S.-China trade deal in place. So it's definitely a bearish outlook with weather and trade in the talking points. And on top of that, you have this missile back and forth going on in Iran and Israel. Yesterday, we saw Iran attack the U.S. installations in the Qatar region. Most of those did not hit their mark. They were intercepted, but it gives you that overall feeling of instability in that geopolitical realm. Brokers estimate that funds have sold 5,900 contracts of wheat, 8,200 contracts of corn, 5,100 contracts of soybeans here over the Monday time frame. Managers also sold 3,200 contracts of soy oil and 2,500 contracts of soy meal. So it was just a risk-off day in general on all of the ag markets. I'm Ryan Martin.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Now let's take a look at your overnight trade brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Let's start off with July corn, 418.5, down 3/4. December new crop corn, 434, up 1/4. July soybeans, 1060 1/4, up 1.5. November soybeans, 1047 3/4, up a penny. July wheat, 548, down 4 3/4. Now looking at livestock from yesterday's close, June live cattle 222.30, down 72 cents. August live cattle 209.37, down 45 cents. July lean hogs 113.45, up 67 cents. August lean hogs 113.05, up 60 cents. September feeder cattle 302.62, up 40 cents. And October feeder cattle $300.85, up 50 cents. In July, Class 3 milk $17.36, up 10 cents. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, everyone. I'm Joe Everett, and this is the Ohio AgNet.